And as you're reading the diagnostic, teachers, what you would do is you would put a check mark. Let's say Terry is in line 1. And for Terry, I'm looking and I'm going to do a check mark on 3 of the rules that Terry is having difficulty with. Now, if you say to me, well, Dr. Lewis, they're having trouble with all of them. I get it. I know that. But find the top 3 that you want them to focus on as you're reading. And if you have other rules, you can add your own rules as well. I wouldn't add a whole bunch, but because these pretty much cover it. But if you have your own rules, you can add 1 or 2, maybe 3 at the most. So you're going to open the 15 rule spreadsheet and export your rosters. And each class, first period would get a tab, second period would get a tab, etc. Remember, you're not going to score the diagnostic pieces. Rather, for each student, place a check mark on the 15 rules spreadsheet for each student's top 3 most common errors. And then you may also add 1 or 2 rules to the list, right? But try to keep the list under 20 items in order to manage your students more effectively throughout the year, okay? Now, what's going to happen is you're going to read these and you're going to just mark 3 rules that they need to work on. And so when you're looking at that class, you're going to look at the collective and you're going to look at the individual students. And what I recommend that you do is you post on your wall, bulletin board or display board, the teacher's 3 big rules. So you're going to have the teacher's 3 big rules. So Ms. Rodriguez, you would say Ms. Rodriguez's 3 big rules. Ms. Perez's 3 big rules. Ms. Guerra's 3 big rules, right? And so you put your name, right? Ms. Barragan's 3 big rules. And these are the 3 big rules that all of your students are going to work on. Now, I'll tell you, in elementary school, typically the 3 big rules are going to be capitalizing the first letter of the first word of the sentence, and punctuation, and spelling. Those are typically elementary 3 big rules. But in middle school, you might have to start with those 3 big rules right there, right? In high school, sometimes we have to start with those 3 big rules. But typically in middle school, your 3 big rules are usually going to be, these are the big ones that they miss: avoid fragments, avoid run-ons, and avoid comma splices. Those are the 3 big ones. And for the editing, teaching them how to edit, for grammar, those 3 big ones are always the distractors on multiple choice tests. So right at the beginning of the year, typically, even though you're doing the diagnostic, the teacher's 3 big rules are probably going to be those 3. In high school, we have to do the spelling and end punctuation and capitalization. We also have to do the fragments, run-ons, and comma splice avoidance. But once we get them where we want them, our 3 big rules in high school are usually going to be, and for those of you who teach 8th grade, or 7th grade pre-AP, you can also add vary your sentence openings, vary your sentence lengths, and vary your sentence types. Those are typically high school rules if we get past the comma splices, run-ons, and fragments. So these are the rules that you want the entire class to address for every piece of writing. And right at the beginning of the year, teachers, if you set the stage that grammar is important, and the other thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to talk to social studies teachers as well, because a lot of times the social studies teachers can help us. And what the kids do, a lot of what I've noticed that kids do, because kids are going to be kids. We can expect kids to be kids. They're not going to worry about grammar and social studies or science. But when I train social studies and science teachers, I say, if you can have one rule, like capitalizing the beginning of the sentence, one rule that will teach the students that grammar is important in all writing. Good. I'm watching your chats. Thank you for repeating the rules. Great job, guys. Thank you. Remember, these 3 rules may also be associated with your grade level standards. Make sure they're approved by the administration, because you always want to make sure that when an administrator walks into your classroom, that you are abiding by the standards that have been given to us. So for the individual, what you're going to do is you're going to give each student his or her 3 rules. So you're going to give each student an index card with his or her top 3 errors. So for example, Miss De Leon might, in her 3 big rules, one rule might be that Liliana is having problems with spelling there, T-H-E-I-R versus T-H-E-R-E versus T-H-E-Y''re. That could be one of her rules. Another one could be subject-verb agreement. Another one could be that Liliana loves to text, and so she's got the lowercase I, right? And not only does she have the lowercase I that's supposed to be capitalized, but instead of the dot over the I, she has a heart. So that might be one of her rules. So each student is going to get 3 rules. And these are different from the teacher's 3 big rules. So now the students have 6 rules. And the 3 big rules that they have on their own, they have to write what their 3 rules are on every writing assignment that they turn in. They have to write it. You don't have to go back and look at what it is. They have to write it. And if they don't write it, you take off 10 points. They'll start writing it. These are my 3 big rules. And when they write those 3 big rules, they'll start looking to make sure that they highlight and make sure that those errors aren't in their writing. For students who move from class to class, I printed a handout and had the students put the handout in the grammar section of their notebooks. And so what I like to do is, for self-contained classes, I'll take the index cards to their desk, but in middle school, they move from class to class in most classes. And so I print out a handout or a card, and they put it in their notebook or in their pencil bag so that they have it. If you have students with Chromebooks or their devices, they would have an Excel spreadsheet, and the first tab would have their 3 rules. And the remaining tabs would consist of their grammar journal lessons that I give them. So that's how I handle that.